Robin Williams. (1978). He appeared on an episode of Happy Days. Fonzie asks him, "So where are you from?" Robin, as a new character Mork, tilts his head and says two words that would quietly change his life. Outer space. And the crazy part? When he said it, you believed him. He didn't play an alien. He made Earth feel like the strange one. That's Robin's magic. He changed the room. And that line, outer space, that began his trajectory from suppressed light to supernova. Marked the moment the universe quietly admitted Robin Williams was never meant to stay small. He didn't rise like a star, he detonated like a supernova. A light too big for his planet to keep. A one of one. Welcome back to One Up the Annals in the season of obsession, where we chart the atom of genius, madness, and the fragile force that holds them apart. Awareness. Tonight, we add Robin Williams to the genius list, alongside Howard Hughes and Heath Ledger. Because Robin wasn't just brilliant, he was empathetic, volatile, obsessed with motion, and built from a heart that could feel an entire room all at once. And tonight, we're going back to look at why. I'm Rab Greason, the original influencer and your tour guide through the space dust left behind by Robin Williams. But first, tonight's disclaimer. Your "hold on, this might get weird" notice. Before we blast off tonight, and yes, here's a quick disclaimer stitched together from the only person who could possibly make this easier, Robin himself. I've tried my best to capture a man of motion and define it for your ears. I encourage you to listen, absorb, and feel him in this podcast. Then use that feeling and watch him in all his performances and relive the specialness and uniqueness this man was. First, in his own immortal words, reality? What a concept. I'm going to try my absolute best to honor his reality, his humanity, his joy, his pain. But if anything tonight bends, wiggles, or shapeshifts a little, consider it our tribute to a man who never did a take the same way twice. Second, please remember Robin's trademark rule. Comedy is acting out of optimism. Everything in this episode comes from that place. Optimism, affection, gratitude. Nothing here is meant to hurt, diminish, diagnose, or definitely not exploit. This is celebration, not sensationalism. Third, as Robin said about life, you're only given a little spark of madness. You mustn't lose it. I am doing my best to carry that spark, carefully, respectfully, without dropping it or setting your house on fire. He'd probably approve of either outcome, honestly. Fourth, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind, always. That applies to Robin, that applies to anyone listening. That applies to the story you're about to hear. If I tread on sensitive ground, just know, I tread softly and with compassion. Finally, and this is the real heart of the disclaimer, as Robin said after decades of making the world laugh, thank you. You're the reason I get up in the morning. Tonight we say that right back to him. So with love, gentleness, joy, silliness, reverence, and just a dash of chaos, because Robin never served anything straight, we begin. The actor in more of my favorite movies than anyone, and my go-to for burning calories just by watching them. Robin Williams, Nanu Nanu. Let's go! Act 1, Robin Williams. You know that one kid in class who can't stop bouncing their leg, tapping their pencil, blurting out the answer before the teacher even finishes the question? Now imagine that kid, but his brain is running at 10 times speed. That was Robin Williams at Idol. He used to describe his mind like a high-performance engine, jammed into a frame that was never built to handle it. A Ferrari motor in a go-kart chassis. Most people spend their lives trying to wake up their brain. His problem was the opposite. It never shut up. By the time he hit the stand-up stage, it was like somebody had finally found the right socket to plug him into. Watch those early sets again sometime. He's not telling jokes up there. He's detonating. He starts a sentence in one accent, finishes it in another, argues with himself as three different people, then pantomimes an entire scene without a word. It's not a routine, it's a supernova in a Hawaiian shirt. The mic isn't a prop, it's a lightning rod. Turning it off took more effort than leaving it on, and tonight, we catch that comet that is Robin Williams and take a look at the bright trail he left behind. The quiet house and the loud imagination. Before the voices, the characters, the manic riffs, there was quiet. Not peaceful quiet, lonely quiet. They lived in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. Wealthy, immaculate, museum quiet. Robin grew up in a house so big he used to say the echo was his first roommate. Picture a little boy wandering hallways designed for adults who were never home. He once said, "I had thousands of toys, but nobody to play with." So he played with himself. Not in the dirty annals way, you degenerate, but in the way a mind creates its own audience. He'd line up soldiers and cars and dolls, doing every voice. He'd narrate battles, courtroom scenes, space missions, soap operas. He'd switch roles mid-sentence. This wasn't practice for stand-up, this was survival for that kid. A kid inventing noise because the silence was too heavy for a child's heart. His mother, the first spark. His mother, Lori, was warm and funny, but poised, and had bright wit, elegant, often busy. Sharp, silly, effortless. She could flip a phrase and light a room. Robin lived for these moments. He wanted to make her laugh, not because he needed applause, because laughter was the only time the house felt alive. He later said, "If I could make my mother laugh, everything felt okay." Right there, that's the origin of his obsession. He learned early. Laughter became connection. Connection created safety. Safety turned escape from loneliness. That formula burned into the bedrock of his personality. His father, Robert Williams, was a Ford executive, always working, always traveling, and was loving in the old-school silent dad way. Firm handshake, quiet approval. A presence more than a participant. Robin admired him deeply, though. But he also feared disappointing him. And that quiet demeanor often felt like disappointment. Robin Williams wasn't unkind. He was intimidating by stillness. His quietness made Robin perform harder. Try more accents, more characters, more energy. It wasn't rebellion, it was effort. He wanted to break through that calm, stoic silence and get a flash of recognition. Validation. That validation of a parent we can seek so desperately it can become self-deprecating. Sometimes he got it, often he didn't. That absence shaped Robin's drive to connect with everyone. Robin would later say because his childhood was so lonely, in large part of his parents being away often, it led to what he called the "love me" syndrome. If he couldn't crack the silence at home, he cracked the silence in the whole world. His parents loved him, but they weren't present. So Robin learned early, you fill silence with whatever you have, and he had imagination. He spent hours alone in his room making up worlds, characters, voices, not because he wanted to be a performer, but because he needed the company. The move to California. When the family moved to the Bay Area, Robin, now 16, went from lonely kid to lonelier kid. He said he was bullied every day of middle school, and now he had a new school, new environment, still introverted, still shy. Yes, shy. Robin Williams was painfully shy as a child. He was the quiet one in the back, building characters in his head, wishing he was normal. Because he knew he was unique, he just didn't understand it was more than a good thing. He studied people, he mimicked them in private, he tried voices in the mirror, he built personalities like a mad scientist. The loneliness of childhood became the workshop of a genius. The first break, theater. It wasn't comedy that found him first, it was theater. He joined drama classes in high school and suddenly realized, oh, here I can be the characters running around in my head and people don't think I'm weird. Imagine the relief. Imagine the explosion. Drama didn't teach Robin to act, it gave him permission to exist. He went from invisible to unstoppable, and this becomes the defining truth of his origin. He wasn't performing to be someone else. He was performing to finally be himself. He was voted funniest and least likely to succeed. Believe it or not. The conservatory years, the switch flips. When he got into Juilliard, one of the most selective performing arts schools in the world, he was one of only 2 students accepted that year. The other was Christopher Reeve, Superman. They were accepted into the advanced program. The instructors knew immediately. This kid wasn't normal. This kid was molten. Some knew he was special, and his constant motion made others uncomfortable, thinking it needed to be contained and classical. He became close friends with Christopher Reeve, who later said Robin had a mind that moved so fast you could practically hear it hum. But even then, classmates and professors say, when he sat alone, he could look profoundly sad. Because even surrounded by talent, by friends, by brilliance, silence still scared him. John Houseman, a legendary acting teacher who led the program, told him, "You don't need classical training. Just go be Robin." Another teacher, Gerald Friedman, called Williams a genius. So in 1976, after 3 years, he was too much talent even for Juilliard. And his supportive teachers felt there was nothing left the school could teach him without holding him back. The unsupportive teachers couldn't control him. So in his junior year play, he won them all over. And then, he left. Juilliard didn't polish him, it unleashed him. Why his childhood matters to the series. Howard Hughes built walls, his obsession was control. Heath Ledger dove inward, his obsession was creation. Robin Williams, his obsession was motion, from silence, from absence, from loneliness, and towards brilliance. His childhood shaped his obsession shaped his genius shaped the world. And his loneliness explains everything. Why he gave so much, why he moved so fast, why he couldn't stop, why he needed people, why silence was the real villain. Robin said, "I used to think the worst thing in life was to end up alone." It's not. The worst thing is to end up with people who make you feel alone. That's not a bumper sticker quote, that's the lonely kid in the big house talking. The boy who learned early that silence with people can hurt worse than silence by yourself. Robin's origin wasn't darkness, it was emptiness. A house too big for a child's heart, a silence too wide for one imagination. His entire life was an answer to a quiet childhood. Before the stages, before the rainbow suspenders, before the whole world realized what had landed in their living rooms. Robin spent those late teens and early 20s years learning how to turn loneliness into power. He had the imagination, he had the characters, he had the speed. But now, finally, he had permission to use them. Theater gave him structure. Drama class didn't just unlock him, it gave him a place to put all those voices without feeling strange or too much. For the first time in his life, people weren't confused by his imagination, they applauded it. That's the shift. Robin didn't discover performance, he discovered belonging. Every face in the crowd cheering was his parents. Stand-up gave him a release. When he drifted into the San Francisco comedy scene around 1976, the dam burst open. Stand-up wasn't something he planned, it was something he needed. He didn't refine comedy, he reinvented its physics. Improv wasn't a skill for him, it was his natural state. The state of a brain that never stopped moving. San Francisco, a city in the middle of its own identity crisis, hippies fading, punk coming, comedy just being born. And into that chaos walked a young man who carried his entire imaginary universe inside his skull. The beginning of stand-up, a force nobody saw coming. He said stand-up is the place where you can do things that you could never do on television. It's the last bastion of freedom. San Francisco in the mid-70s had a tiny, scrappy comedy scene. Mostly folk singer bars, beat poet leftovers, and weird experimental stages. Robin walks in and dominates. This is raw, unhinged, feral talent. At the Holy City Zoo, the tiny, grimy clubhouse of SF comedy, comics stood on a rickety platform with a spotlight that buzzed like a dying firefly. Robin gets up there and jumps across the stage, slips between voices like gears in a machine, improvises entire 3-minute stories that didn't exist 10 seconds earlier. acts out scenes with invisible characters, moves too fast for the spotlight to track. It wasn't just comedy, it was Genesis. Comedians weren't watching him, they were studying him, trying to figure out what species he was. One comic said, "Watching Robin was like watching the birth of a new element." At the time, comedy was structured. Setup, punchline, callback, exit. Robin Williams walked on stage and burned it to the ground. He didn't tell jokes, he became jokes. He'd shapeshift mid-thought, going from a British monarch to a confused frog to a Russian astronaut having a panic attack in zero gravity. All in 12 seconds without breathing. You weren't watching a routine, you were watching a man break the speed of thought. Audiences weren't laughing because his jokes were just clever, they were laughing because their brains literally couldn't keep up. Robin invented a new comedic physics. Elastic time. He could stretch a moment or compress it. Character collisions. He'd throw personalities at each other like particles in a collider. Improv detonation. He didn't riff off the audience, he riffed through them. Hyper-empathy reading. He could feel the energy of a room like a tuning fork. Full-body performance. He didn't stand still, he occupied the stage. He was releasing energy, pure, unfiltered, pressurized energy. The introduction of drugs, the dangerous match. Here's the factual truth. Cocaine hit Robin. Late 70s, early 80s, and it hit him hard. San Francisco was drenched in cocaine during those years. The club scene, the music scene, the comedy scene. Coke bowls on tables, lines backstage. Dealers were more common than microphones. Plenty of celebrities. And for a young man whose brain already ran at Formula 1 speed, cocaine didn't slow him down, it accelerated the acceleration. He later said, "Cocaine is God's way of saying, you're making too much money." But the deeper truth was this. He wasn't using it to get high, he was using it to cope. This is where the cracks start forming. Cocaine numbed the anxiety. It quieted the sadness. It drowned the silence. For a moment. Emotionally, the torn performer. Think of Robin in these years as two overlapping beings. The onstage Robin, the supernova. The audience saw velocity, chaos, brilliance, infinite characters, pure joy. He delivered what looked like transcendent creativity. People were calling him the future of comedy before he even had rent money. 2. The offstage Robin, the quiet boy again. Friends describe him as shy, vulnerable, unsure. Afraid to disappoint, desperate to connect, emotionally porous. One comic said he could light up a room and look empty 5 minutes later. This is where the love me syndrome from childhood truly metastasized. If they're laughing, I exist. If they stop, I disappear. And silence was his childhood villain. So he kept performing, kept speeding, kept numbing, kept running, kept motion. If you really want to understand Robin Williams' emotional landscape during those years, the chaos, the speed, the thrill, the danger, you have to talk about March 5th, 1982. The night John Belushi died. Because Robin wasn't just there in spirit or around the industry. He was literally there, in Belushi's bungalow at the Chateau Marmont, hours before John overdosed. This moment becomes one of the defining shadows cast across Robin's early career, a moment he carried like a scar he almost never talked about. The night at the Chateau Marmont. Robin dropped by the bungalow that night along with Robert De Niro. Not for a party, not for a bender, but for a visit. A spontaneous pop-in among comedians and friends who lived in the same fast electric orbit. When Robin walked in the room, he sensed the energy instantly. Chaotic, fragmented, dark. Belushi was erratic, drug-wired, half-lucid. Robin stayed briefly, long enough to see something was off, wrong, dangerous, so he left early. But as he stood to go, John Belushi called out the last words Robin would ever hear him say. "Don't leave me alone." It wasn't a punchline, it wasn't a joke, it wasn't a comedian vamping for the room, it was a plea. And hours later, Belushi was dead. What that did to Robin, emotionally, personally. Robin was still young, only 30, early enough in fame that the rocket was still rising, late enough in life that the darkness of Hollywood wasn't a rumor anymore. Belushi's death hit him like a shockwave. It wasn't just losing a friend, it was losing a mirror. A terrifying glimpse of where unchecked speed, brilliance, loneliness, and pressure can lead. Robin said years later, "It was a huge wake-up call. That sobered the out of me." He quit cocaine cold the next day, not gradually, not cutting back, done. He never touched it again. Because in Belushi, he'd seen the worst possible version of his own velocity. That Ferrari engine in a go-kart frame suddenly didn't feel funny. It felt fatal. The survivorship guilt. Robin carried deep guilt about that night. Not logical guilt, not blame, the emotional kind. He wondered for years, even though he never said it publicly, if he should have stayed longer. If he'd left too soon. If he could have changed the outcome. He couldn't have, though. Everyone who knew the situation agrees with that. But empathy is a double-edged sword. And Robin's empathy was weapon grade. He felt responsible for pain that wasn't his. Belushi's death didn't just scare him straight. It made him terrified of what silence, loneliness, and drugs could do to someone wired like him. He was the moment Robin Williams stopped believing he was invincible and started understanding the cost of velocity. Now, I will add, there are conflicting memories of that night. According to Bill Murray, John Belushi may have used a drug combination he'd never taken before. According to medical reports, he died of a lethal mix of cocaine and heroin after years of heavy cocaine use. The exact truth may never be known, but for Robin Williams watching his friend collapse under the weight of speed, fame, and substance, the warning shot was real. He walked away from cocaine at the height of his fame, at the height of his velocity, at the height of the temptation that swallows most people whole. And soon after he had his first child, which was another critical circumstance in his sobriety. He once said in an interview, "You get one of those moments where you go, I want to be here. I need to be here. I have a kid now." And for the next 20 years, he stayed clean. That choice matters in this story because it proves something essential. Robin Williams wasn't reckless. He wasn't a cliché. He wasn't spiraling. He corrected. He course changed when he had to. He chose life. He chose clarity. He chose responsibility. And later, when he relapsed briefly into alcohol in the 2000s, he checked himself into rehab again, quietly, humbly, the way only people who want to stay alive do. It wasn't caused by weakness. Belushi's death wasn't the end of a wild era for him. It was the recalibration of a man who suddenly understood the cost of redlining. And that's where we slide right back into the rocket he was building from the late 70s into the early 80s. Now let's get back to the timeline. All within a year, 1977, a TV spot on Laugh-In. A tiny role, Can I Do It Till I Need Glasses? A guest appearance as Mork on Happy Days that detonated into his own series, Mork and Mindy, was supposed to be nothing, a silly one-episode gimmick. But Robin Williams walked in and everyone noticed. In the episode when Fonzie asks him where he's from, Robin fires back outer space. 2 words. And he delivers them with so much oddball brilliance, that unpredictable, elastic, barely contained chaos energy, that everyone on set instantly realized this wasn't a character. This was Robin. This was how his brain actually operated. ABC executives saw the footage and essentially said, "We can't let this go, build a show around him." And that's exactly what happened. A single guest spot detonated into his own series, Mork and Mindy. Not because the writers planned it, not because the network wanted it, but because Robin's performance was so explosive, so unrepeatable, that the character demanded a universe big enough to hold him. That's how powerful he was. And suddenly, that shy boy who once spoke only through characters was now speaking to millions. At Juilliard, he was still that shy boy from Bloomfield Hills. But now his loneliness had vocabulary, ambition, and ritual. He discovered something life-altering. Theater let him control the silence. He no longer had to fill the void alone in his bedroom. Now there were scripts, partners, audiences, freedom to be himself and be accepted. Entire worlds built to absorb the chaos he'd been carrying privately. The leap to acting, the world catches up. As Mork and Mindy developed, the writers didn't write scripts for Robin. They wrote scaffolding, skeletons, frameworks he could climb on, jump from, or completely demolish. The writers just pointed the camera at Robin and tried not to get run over. He'd leap over furniture, hang off doorways, improvise entire scenes, force the rest of the cast to either match his speed or just get out of the way. He turned a goofy sitcom alien into a weird little emotional grenade, firing off jokes 1 second, landing a gut punch of sincerity the next. Directors would say, "Just keep the cameras rolling, something brilliant will happen." And it always did. Behind the chaos on screen, his acting had a deep vulnerability. Comedy was the mask, empathy was the core, and drama was the truth he'd been hiding since childhood. One crew member said, he'd blow the roof off a scene and walk back to his trailer looking like a kid who didn't think he belonged. Robin Williams wasn't confident, he was compelled. That's why Dead Poets Society, Good Will Hunting, The Fisher King, and What Dreams May Come hit so hard. When he played serious roles, he wasn't acting. He was letting the quiet boy out of the mansion, and we all felt it. Now we pivot perfectly. So when you see Robin explode onto a stage in Act 1, when you hear that Ferrari engine firing in a go-kart frame, understand this. You're not watching a performance. You're watching a man who learned early that motion was survival, and the world finally gave him a place to run. 1977 to 1983. If Robin's childhood forged the spark, the 1980s threw it into gasoline. By the time he stepped onto a real stage, he wasn't promising talent. He was a Category 5 comedic event, whose brain ran faster than the camera shutter snapping his photo. Let's break down the reality. Stand-up was still his home base. Even as Hollywood came calling, Robin never stopped doing stand-up. In fact, he needed it. Stand-up was the only place he felt truly free. No script, no marks on the floor, no cameras to confine him. Just pure vapor trail improv, the Ferrari engine unleashed. Even when he became a TV star, he'd finish a 12-hour studio day, throw on a baseball cap, sneak into small San Francisco and LA clubs, do 3 shows in one night until 2 or 3 a.m. No entourage, no PR team, no handlers. Just him, a mic, and the need to outrun silence. He wasn't doing it for money. He wasn't doing it for exposure. He was doing it because he couldn't turn off. Ferraris don't idle, they move. Robin said, if I didn't go on stage, the characters would build up. This wasn't practice, this was pressure release. Stand-up was therapy, adrenaline, escape, validation, oxygen, all at once. And the crowds, they weren't coming to just watch comedy. They were coming to watch a man try to outrun his own brain in real time. The spark that wouldn't sit still. That's the first thing to understand about his obsession. For Howard Hughes, obsession was control. For Heath Ledger, obsession was creation. For Robin Williams, obsession was motion. If he kept moving, kept talking, kept spinning, kept connecting, then the static in his own head didn't have time to catch up. And that's what made him different. He wasn't building a fortress like Hughes, stacking every brick carefully until he sealed himself inside. He wasn't diving into projects so deep that the surface disappeared like Heath. Robin was sprinting down the middle of a highway juggling chainsaws and teddy bears, trying to keep everybody else entertained so he didn't have to sit alone with the quiet. And the industry loved him for it. Producers wanted the Robin effect, that wild improvisation that made everything feel alive. Directors would just let the camera roll. His co-stars would talk about how he'd do 10 different versions of the same moment, each one funnier or deeper than the last. Like he was physically incapable of giving you the same take twice. On the outside, it looked like pure joy. On the inside, it was something more dangerous. A man who didn't know how to turn his own brain down. But here's the twist in our little atomic model of genius and madness. For most people, normal life is the electron, the orbit. Routine, rest, stillness, laundry, errands, silence. For Robin, normal wasn't orbit. Normal was fission. Stillness wasn't peace. It was the return of childhood silence he spent his whole life trying to outrun. And here's where the story deepens. He wasn't just performing to feed his own inner lonely child. He was performing to feed everybody else's. Robin once said, I think the saddest people always try their hardest to make people happy. because they know what it's like to feel absolutely worthless. And they don't want anyone else to feel like that. That wasn't a quote, that was a confession. So when I say motion was his obsession, I don't just mean he kept driving toward validation. I mean he was giving validation, constantly, endlessly, to everyone around him. He became the parent to everyone he never had, the comfort he always wanted, the light for every dark room he ever stepped into. He used to say, "You're only given one little spark of madness, you mustn't lose it." Robin didn't lose it, he weaponized it. He took that spark and used it like a flashlight on other people's darkness. The crowd, the stage, the set, the green room, the troops overseas, the crew guy in the corner who looked like he needed a laugh. That was his natural environment. That was the charge. That was the spin. Robin Williams didn't just perform, he rescued people. One laugh, one moment, one spark at a time. The quiet moments, the still rooms, the times there was no one to perform for. Those weren't peaceful. Those were dangerous. We like to imagine geniuses sitting in silence, calmly crafting their work. Robin was the opposite. His genius existed in the instant, in the rocket launch between thought and speech. If he stopped long enough to think about it, it would evaporate. Stages to sets, comedy clubs, late-night shows, charity events, war zones, anywhere there was a crowd to plug into, he was there, turning the volume up to drown out everything else. And in the first act of his life, it worked. The spark became the brand, the velocity became the legend. The world fell in love with the man who could outrun any darkness with a single, ridiculous, beautiful sentence. But obsession always sends you a bill. For Hughes, the cost was isolation. For Heath, it was exhaustion. For Robin, the cost would come later as a robbery of his mind, when that spark couldn't stay lit at the same speed. When the very brain that powered all that brilliance started to glitch. We're not there yet. Right now, he's still the brightest particle in the room. The atom spinning so fast it holds everyone else together. The question isn't, was he a genius? The question is, what happens to a man whose entire identity depends on never slowing down, when life, and then illness, begins to hit the brakes? That's where we're headed. The mirror, the man who felt everyone else's pain. Because Robin Williams wasn't just fast, he wasn't just funny, he wasn't just a human sparkler firing off personalities like Roman candles. He was a mirror. He didn't just perform for people, he performed to heal people. And that's the part that sets him apart from Hughes and Heath. Their obsessions turned inward. Robin's obsession went outward, ripping through him like electricity seeking a grounded wire. You still with me? Because this is the part where we separate the legend from the caricature. The constant need to connect. Some comedians chase laughs for ego. Robin chased them because he felt the room too deeply. He could walk into a space and sense the sadness in someone he'd never met. He could read a crowd like most people read text messages. He could find the one person in the audience who was hurting and somehow direct the entire show at the wound. He wasn't performing to be adored, he was performing so you wouldn't be alone. That's why cast members said Robin never left after cut. Why crew members said he talked to them for hours. Why friends and strangers say he made them feel like the only person in the world. His destination wasn't applause, it was connection. That's the irony of a man who could fill stadiums with laughter. He didn't need an audience, he needed people. Real people. The double-edged sword of empathy. But here's the hang-up. The thing no one likes to admit. The people who feel the most often carry the most. Empathy is beautiful until it becomes porous. Until you soak up everyone else's sadness like a sponge and forget what's yours. Robin could absorb your grief in seconds, but where does his go? Where does the pain he didn't have time to process live? Where do the wounds from decades of caretaking settle? The gift and the cost. Robin's genius had two gears, velocity and compassion. Velocity made him incandescent. Compassion made him unforgettable. But the cost this obsession is exhaustion. The cost of being everyone's anchors being underwater while everyone else gets to float. They're buoyant. You're holding the bottom. They can breathe. You're holding your breath. And without rest, without stillness, without a neutral sea to recover in, even the strongest awareness can slip. And that's when a man like Robin becomes vulnerable to the madness he kept at bay for decades. That's why you see this pattern across his life. On set, he performs. Off set, he comforts. Backstage, he lifts people up. After midnight, he checks in on everyone else. At rap parties, he's still on, just in case someone needs him. He lived in service mode. A man wired to scan every room for the person who felt alone or unseen, because he remembered exactly what that felt like. And every time he gave a little piece of himself, he took on someone else's weight. That's the tragic beauty of Act 2. Robin Williams saved thousands of people, but no one could save him from feeling everything. Now pause here and we'll get some levity. Let's explore some of Robin's work we all know. 1978. Late 1970s, the launch. 1978, Mork from Mork changes the world. Mork and Mindy becomes a smash hit. Robin becomes a household name overnight. At one point, it had 60 million weekly viewers, numbers that don't even exist anymore. Fun fact, the producers had to start leaving parts of the script blank, and they were labeled, "Robin will fill this." Gary Marshall said he was the only man I ever saw who could improvise faster than you could laugh. Stand-up in the late 70s. Robin was doing 300 plus stand-up sets a year. He'd finish filming and then hit 3 clubs in a night. His San Francisco shows became legendary. The 1980s, the unstoppable decade. 1980, Popeye, his first major starring film. Mixed reviews, but everyone agreed. Robin carried the whole movie on willpower. 1982, The World According to Garp. Critics realized he wasn't just funny, he could act. This is where serious Robin Williams is born. 1986, The Corncob Pipe of Pain and Genius, A Night at the Met. 1986 is the year Robin Williams stops being a comedian and becomes a force in nature. A Night at the Met isn't just a stand-up special, it's a live detonation. Robin burns through accents, characters, geopolitics, parenthood, addiction, love, lust, Reagan-era madness, and pure absurdity, all while moving so fast the camera crew starts sweating. Comedy historians rank it as one of the top 10 stand-up specials of all time, not just because of the jokes, but because of the velocity. He would take a thought, sharpen it, detonate it, resurrect it, and fire it off again before the audience even caught their breath. What most people don't know, A Night at the Met was fueled by pain. It was the first major special he filmed after Belushi's death, and the first major special he performed sober. This is hard to believe because he moved on stage like wildfire, non-stop and out of control, burning up everything. So when you watch him pacing that stage at the Metropolitan Opera House, sweat pouring, voices flying, body in constant motion, you're witnessing a man trying to outrun grief with pure brilliance. It's not just comedy, it's catharsis. 1987, Good Morning Vietnam, the year Robin turned chaos into courage. This is the role where Robin Williams didn't just act. He combusted, this time on film. Playing real-life radio DJ Adrian Cronauer, Robin improvised most of the on-air rants you hear in the movie. And I mean improvised. Entire monologues, rapid-fire character switches, accents, news riffs, political satire. All created in real time, like his brain was a broadcast tower with no off switch. Hollywood called it genius. The military called it healing. This performance earned him his first Oscar nomination, and for once the Academy had to admit what audiences already knew. Robin wasn't performing a role, he was channeling something larger. And here's the part that people rarely know too, the human part. Between takes while the crew adjusted lights or setups, Robin would step off to the side, lean against a wall, and quietly call real Vietnam veterans, not for PR, to ask them, does this feel right? Does this joke cross a line? Did you ever hear something like this on the radio there? If they said no, he'd change it. If they said yes, he made it stronger. He wasn't trying to be funny for the sake of funny. He wanted those who lived the trauma to feel respected, not mocked. That's why this movie mattered so much to veterans. They saw themselves in him, not because he played their pain, but because he honored it. Morale went up wherever Robin screened for troops. This wasn't a studio line, this was military testimony. He performed for stationed soldiers who hadn't heard laughter in months. He made men in uniform laugh so hard they forgot where they were, even if only for seconds. That's the Robin Williams effect. Comedy as defiance, laughter as rebellion, joy as a weapon against despair. 1989, Victoria's pick, Dead Poets Society. Oh Captain, my Captain, and the role that let the quiet boy speak. If Good Morning Vietnam proved Robin could fuse chaos with heart, Dead Poets Society proved he could silence a room with nothing but stillness. This is the film that didn't just elevate his career, it revealed a dimension of him the world didn't know yet. The teacher, the mentor, the soul whisperer. What most people don't know behind the scenes. The students weren't allowed to meet Professor Keating in character until filming. Director Peter Weir wanted their awe to be real. The wide-eyed, whoa energy you see in that class, that's not acting, that's 100% authentic Robin impact. Robin didn't follow the script for most of the classroom material. Weir told him, teach them something, anything. And Robin did. Philosophy, improv, poetry, accents, jokes, full lessons. The cast later said filming those scenes felt like being enrolled in a real masterclass. The standing on desks scene wasn't meant to be as emotional as it became. The boys broke into real tears because the day before, Robin had pulled each of them aside and told them privately something he admired about them as people. They weren't crying for Keating, they were crying for Robin. Robin insisted on shooting some moments with no jokes at all, because he knew his instinct was to lighten everything. He said, Keating doesn't need to be funny, he needs to be real. Filming got so intense the boys formed a real secret society. Not of poetry, but of supporting each other emotionally, because Robin encouraged them to see themselves as artists. The role's impact, nominated for a Best Actor Oscar, became a worldwide cultural touchstone for teachers, students, and anyone who ever felt unseen. The phrase, "Oh Captain, my Captain," became one of the most quoted lines in film history. The 1990s, the global icon era. 1991, The Fisher King. If Good Morning Vietnam proved Robin could blend comedy and pain, The Fisher King proved he could bleed for a role and still make it glow. This was one of the first films where Robin wasn't playing a character with wounds, he was playing a character defined by wounds. He portrayed Perry, a homeless man with severe trauma and delusions, and he did it with such sincerity that critics said he was too honest to be acting. Terry Gilliam, the director, said Robin was the only actor alive who could play madness without disrespecting it. The haunting Red Night hallucination scenes, Robin insisted they be filmed in a way that didn't stigmatize mental illness. He wanted terror, not mockery. Jeff Bridges said working with Robin felt like acting next to a live wire, while also standing in prayer. Robin received a Golden Globe nomination for the role, and the movie itself won the Golden Globe for Best Picture, Comedy Musical. Many fans don't know this. Robin spent time talking with unhoused individuals and mental health patients before filming, not for research, but because he truly wanted to understand their hearts, not just their symptoms. In the ballroom dance scene in Grand Central Station, critics still call it one of the most beautiful moments in modern cinema, a rare glimpse of pure, unfiltered Robin tenderness. Jeff Bridges said, Robin was the safest place for an actor to be. You could fall and he'd catch you. This film is the hinge where audiences realized Robin Williams didn't just play broken people, he healed them on screen. 1992 Aladdin. If there was ever a role Robin Williams was genetically engineered to play, it was the genie. And the legend around this one is real. Robin improvised over 16 hours of material in the booth, so much that the Academy disqualified the film from Best Adapted Screenplay because too much of it was Robin. Disney animators reportedly threw out entire sequences just to rebuild them around whatever insane character or voice he conjured mid-line. The genie was originally supposed to be a slow, wise mentor. Robin turned him into a neon pinball machine of impressions, fourth wall breaks, and pure comedy chaos. And Disney said, yeah, let's go with that. The famous "be yourself" buzzing scene, 100% ad-lib. His performance changed animation forever. For the first time, studios realized you could center an entire film around a comedian's improvisational style. The movie became a global phenomenon, and Robin's Genie is still considered one of the greatest voice performances in film history. And here's the emotional dagger. When asked what he hoped kids learn from the Genie, Robin said that they're loved, truly loved, no matter how small they feel. 1993, Mrs. Doubtfire, another smash hit. He improvised so much the director said he could have cut 3 different movies from his ad-libs. Fun fact, the restaurant scene where Mrs. Doubtfire's teeth fall into the wine glass was completely unscripted. The cast-breaking character was real. It won a Golden Globe. When his teenage co-star Lisa Jacob was kicked out of high school for missing too many classes while filming Mrs. Doubtfire, Williams wrote a heartfelt letter to the principal advocating for her. He argued that her professional work was a valuable, real-world education that should be encouraged. And my sister's pick, Good Will Hunting, 1997, and my favorite movie. The role that didn't just win Robin an Oscar, it revealed his soul. If Dead Poets Society showed the world Robin could guide young hearts, Good Will Hunting showed the world he could break his own open on camera. This isn't just a film in his career, this is the film where Robin Williams set aside every mask, every accent, every riff, every improv lightning bolt, and let the quiet, wounded boy from his childhood speak as a grown man. Sean Maguire wasn't a character, he was a confession. What made this role different? Before filming, Robin told Gus Van Sant and the writers Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, "I don't want to be funny, I want to be human." And they trusted him completely. The park bench scene, the one that changed film history, the most famous monologue in that movie. The park bench speech was 80% improvised. Matt Damon said, "The take you see in the movie was the very first time he performed it. I forgot I was acting." Matt Damon's reaction was authentic. During editing, the crew realized something uncanny. The background of the frame froze for a moment, not because of a camera glitch, but because everyone on set stopped moving. Not because of a camera glitch, but because everyone on set stopped moving to watch Robin Williams deliver it. That's how powerful it was. And the farting wife story? Pure Robin. The scene where Sean talks about his late wife farting in bed? Totally improvised. Matt Damon lost it laughing. That's real. You can actually see the camera shaking from the cameraman laughing too. Van Sant kept it because it was the most honest line in the film. Love isn't grand gestures, it's knowing someone deeply enough to love the weird parts. That was Robin's philosophy. Robin found his own grief in Sean. Sean Maguire is a widower grieving his wife. Robin knew that pain. His friend Christopher Reeve had recently suffered his spinal cord injury. Robin was one of the first people to visit him, bursting through the hospital door, pretending to be a Russian proctologist just to make him laugh. Reeve said, "It was the first time I'd laughed since the accident. He saved my life that day." Sean's compassion, Sean's grief, Sean's gentleness with Will, that was Robin channeling his own losses, fears, loyalties, and deepest empathy. That's why it feels real. It's Not Your Fault, the scene that broke everyone. This was one of the hardest scenes for Matt Damon to shoot. Gus Van Sant told Robin, "Keep saying it until you feel something. Then, don't stop." Robin kept repeating it, softer each time. Damon held out. Until Robin stepped closer, put a hand on his shoulder, and changed the tone of his voice. That wasn't acting. That was Robin reaching into Matt's own pain. Damon later said, "When he hugged me, I wasn't acting anymore." Robin cried after that take. Everyone did. Awards. Won Academy Award Best Supporting Actor, his only Oscar. Golden Globe nominee. The film itself won Best Original Screenplay for Damon and Affleck. When he accepted the Oscar, Robin said, "This might be the one time I'm speechless." Which is funny because he improvised half the movie. A legacy bigger than the film. To this day, therapists around the world use the bench monologue and the "It's Not Your Fault" scene in training and therapy sessions. Robin didn't just act compassion, he demonstrated it. He didn't just play a healer, he embodied one. And here's the deepest truth. Sean Maguire is the closest the world ever got to the real Robin Williams, the man underneath the supernova. Gentle, wounded, loyal, funny without cruelty. A healer who couldn't always heal himself. A man who used connection as his oxygen. Good Will Hunting isn't just a highlight of his career. It is his heart, on film, preserved forever. My mom's pick, 1998, Patch Adams. My mom's pick, 1998, Patch Adams. This is the role that proved Robin could weaponize compassion just as powerfully as comedy. He played real-life Dr. Hunter Patch Adams, a man who believed laughter was medicine. Which meant Robin wasn't acting, he was basically clocking in. Fun fact, the real Adams said Robin captured his spirit so well that he laughed and cried in the same breath watching him. Critics were mixed. Audiences were obsessed. It became one of his highest grossing films of the decade. And Robin, personally visited children's hospitals for years afterwards, often in character, often unannounced. It's the performance that reminded the world Robin Williams didn't just play healers, he was one. 1998, What Dreams May Come. The most beautiful, painful love letter Robin ever left us. If Good Will Hunting showed the world Robin could open his heart, What Dreams May Come is the film where he walks straight into it. Barefoot, unarmored, and incandescent. People forget this now, but when this movie released, critics were split. Audiences cried. But the people who understood Robin really understood him. They knew immediately. This wasn't acting, this was testimony. This was Robin Williams exploring grief, memory, loyalty, loss, art, and the afterlife with the same emotional honesty he used off camera to comfort strangers. It wasn't a performance, it was a pilgrimage. What most people don't know behind the scenes. Robin filmed this during one of the most emotionally vulnerable periods of his life. He had recently suffered personal losses, including the decline of friends and people he loved. His marriage was struggling. He was quietly holding a lot. Director Vincent Ward later said, Robin didn't have to reach for pain. It lived close to the surface, and he carried it with grace. The paint world scenes were his idea. Originally, the afterlife was meant to be more realistic. Robin pushed for a world that felt like a painting, soft, fluid, dreamlike. He said, if this is heaven, it should be where you feel something, where love is, tactile. So they rebuilt the entire visual concept around his insight. The scene where he discovers his daughter's identity? Robin cried before the cameras rolled. He said he didn't need preparation. He understood what it meant to love a child so much you'd recognize them anywhere, in any shape, in any world. The health sequences shook him. Robin struggled filming the scenes where he searches for Annie in the depths. He told Ward that portraying a husband refusing to abandon the woman he loves felt too close to real life. Ward said, Robin was terrified of emotional abandonment, which is why he played devotion better than anyone. The Heaven monologue. The every day I love you more line was his contribution. Not the words, the tone, the softness, that tiny trembling sincerity. Ward said Robin insisted it can't be a speech, it has to be a whisper. Why this film matters in the annals of obsession. In What Dreams May Come, Robin Williams isn't performing manic genius. He isn't giving speed or chaos. He isn't plugging into the crowd. This is the rare film where Robin slows down, where everything is still, where silence isn't the villain, it's the canvas. Act 1, motion. Act 2, empathy. Act 3, glitch. But here in this film, Robin shows us what awaits a soul when the spark calms without extinguishing. This is the alternate universe of Robin Williams, the version of him that existed beneath the velocity, the quiet part of the atom, the nucleus when the electrons finally rest. And the metaphor becomes perfect. If Good Will Hunting is Robin teaching us how to heal, What Dreams May Come is Robin teaching us how to hold on. The themes he embodied, not performed. Love. He fights through heaven and hell for his wife. Robin later said, love isn't grand gestures, it's persistence. It's staying when staying is hard. Grief. He understood grief intimately. He approached it with respect, not melodrama. Compassion. Every person he meets in the afterlife he treats with tenderness, even the ones who hurt him. Sacrifice. The ending isn't tragedy, it's devotion. It's the ultimate Robin Williams message. No one you love is ever truly alone. People still say this is the movie that helped them survive grief. It is possibly the most visually beautiful depiction of love, loss, and connection ever filmed. And Robin is the soul that makes it real. The 2000s, the multiverse of Robin. Stand-up return. 2002 special Robin Williams live on Broadway becomes the best-selling stand-up DVD of the year. Performed over 30 sold-out shows during that run. Insomnia, 2002, shows terrifying depth in the psychological drama. Al Pacino said, he was the sweetest man alive playing one of the darkest characters I've ever seen. That's talent. 1 Hour Photo, 2002. Haunting, chilling, brilliant. Proved again that Robin had an inner stillness he rarely revealed. 2010's The Final Run. 2013, The Crazy Ones TV. The first sitcom return in decades. Co-stars said he was pure electricity every take. 2014, Night at the Museum. Secret of the Tomb. Even while battling undiagnosed Lewy body dementia, Robin showed up every day. The crew said he apologized after every forgotten line, as if he had ever owed us perfection. Robin's career by the numbers. Over 70 film roles, 12 stand-up specials, 300 plus stand-up sets a year during peak years. Over 50 television appearances, 4 Oscar nominations, 1 win, 6 Golden Globes, 2 Screen Actor Guild Awards, 2 Emmys, a Grammy. It's widely believed he improvised more on camera than any actor in Hollywood history. Visited over 90 military bases to perform for troops. Personally funded dozens of charities. Silently. Quotes from legends. Christopher Reeve. He saved my life more than once. He was the best kind of friend. The kind who shows up before you ask. Whoopi Goldberg. He was the person who made the world feel safer just by being in it. Billy Crystal. Robin didn't have an off switch. He had only love set on high. Steven Spielberg. He kept me sane while I filmed Schindler's List. He called every day to make me laugh. Every day Steven Spielberg would finish filming some of the darkest scenes of his career, and he talked to Robin just to stay sane. When Richard Pryor was too sick to drive himself, Robin would take time out of his busy schedule to drive Richard around wherever he needed to go. The purpose of this section. This levity break reminds us Robin Williams wasn't just a tragic loss, he was a nuclear force of joy. Act 3. The warning signs begin. Somewhere in this chapter, somewhere in the years of giving and giving and giving, Robin's eternal system starts to strain. This isn't madness, this isn't addiction, this isn't the cliché story we've heard 100 times. This is a man who kept everyone else's lights on, until his own flickered. He began to feel little glitches, anxiety spikes, memory slips, disorientation he can't explain. He tells his friends he feels off but doesn't have words for it. He starts to wonder why the improv feels harder, why the spark doesn't always ignite, why the room feels heavier than it used to. He thinks it's depression. He thinks maybe he's burning out. He thinks maybe the silence is finally catching up. But that's not the truth. The truth is far crueler. The disease that will take him is already whispering in the background, quietly rearranging the chemistry of a man who outran silence his entire life. This is Act 3, the glitch. The velocity sputters, where connection falters, where the electrons start to wobble, where the spark meets the shadow for the first time. And this is where the heartbreak begins. The glitch, when the spark misfires. There's a moment in every legend's life when you can feel the shift. That tiny hairline crack where brilliance stops feeling infinite and starts feeling fragile. For Robin, the crack didn't roar in, it whispered. It came in weird little moments. Not dramatic, not cinematic. Not the kind of thing you'd even notice unless you knew him. But people close to him did. A forgotten line here, a stutter in a routine he'd done 1,000 times. A moment of hesitation in a brain that never hesitated. You still here? I know this is a long one, but this is where the story stops being the one you think you know. This isn't a man slipping into depression. This isn't burnout. This isn't drugs. This isn't some tragic Hollywood spiral. This is something far darker. Biological betrayal. The first signs nobody knew were signs. Friends noticed it in conversations. Robin would start a story, then lose his place. Not in a charming, improv-y way, in a "what was I just saying?" kind of way. His anxiety, which had always been background noise, suddenly spiked into full panic attacks. He developed insomnia so severe he'd pace the house at night, convinced something was wrong but unable to articulate what. He told his wife, "I just feel off, not myself." And for a man who could shapeshift into 100 personalities on stage, feeling "not myself," was terrifying. His brain, the engine that powered 1,000 characters, was misfiring. Not slowing down, breaking. Robin started having hallucinations. He thought he saw things moving that weren't there. He heard noises in quiet rooms. Shadows shifted at the corners of his vision. This wasn't imagination. This wasn't creativity. This was Lewy body dementia, one of the cruelest neurodegenerative diseases on Earth, quietly rewiring his brain while he was still trying to make people laugh. Imagine being a man who built his entire self around reading a room, and suddenly, you can't trust what you're seeing in it. Imagine being a man whose superpower is speed, and your thoughts start hitting potholes you can't fill. Imagine being a man whose entire identity is crafted around connection, and suddenly you're slipping out of sync with the world. That's the cruelty of this disease. It doesn't take your life, it takes yourself. And before we go any further into the darkness of Act 3, let me be clear about something. Let me be clear about something important. Something his family deserves, and something the world too often forgets. Robin Williams was deeply loved. By his children, by his wife, by his friends, by the people who worked with him every day. By strangers who became family because he treated them that way. This man was not alone. He was not abandoned. He was not drifting in some emotional vacuum. His wife Susan was with him, confused, scared, compassionate, watching symptoms no one could understand yet. She later said Robin wasn't losing his mind was losing him. His children adored him, and he adored them right back. He said his kids gave him gravity and a life of constant motion. And here's the truth we must honor. The people around him did everything they could, but Lewy body dementia is a monster no one sees coming, until it's already inside the walls. No one caused this. No one missed something obvious. No one failed him. This wasn't a story of family turmoil. This was a story of biology attacking a man surrounded by love. And when you hear more about his final months, remember this. He didn't exit a life of loneliness. He exited a life full of people who cared, and who have spent years trying to make sure the world understands what really happened to him. Here's the most devastating part. He knew something was wrong. Not just stress, not just aging, not just a rough patch. He knew something fundamental was breaking. He told his doctors, "I don't know what's happening. I can't hold on to thoughts." He cried to friends that he felt like his mind was slipping away. He wasn't losing his identity. He was losing the ability to hold an identity at all. For a man who could conjure characters in seconds, that's like waking up one day unable to speak. Like having your brakes slam without warning. The role that broke his heart. During the filming of Night at the Museum 3, the crew noticed the change. Robin kept forgetting lines. He'd get confused mid-scene. He'd apologize between takes, saying, "I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on with me." The man who once improvised entire movies in real time couldn't remember his cue. He knew something was wrong, he just didn't know what. Doctors misdiagnosed him with Parkinson's at first, which explained some symptoms, but not the hallucinations, the panic, the cognitive glitches. Meanwhile, the disease accelerated, hard. Lewy body dementia moves like a thief, silently, quickly, viciously. Robin started to feel trapped in his own head. He told his wife he couldn't understand his own thoughts sometimes. He said he felt like he was disappearing. For a man built on motion, losing your mental footing feels like drowning in cement. For a man built on connection, losing the ability to read a room feels like exile. For a man built on awareness, losing your sense of self is death in slow motion. When the spark meets the silence. Here's where the metaphor becomes reality. Robin, the spark, ran his whole life on speed, faster than sadness, faster than trauma, faster than the stillness that scared him. But in these months he slowed. Not because he wanted to, because his brain forced him to. And when he slowed, the silence caught him. Not a peaceful quiet, not a meditative stillness, not rest. A silence filled with confusion, a silence filled with fear, where he couldn't trust what he saw, heard, or thought. A silence where he, the man who brought comfort to millions, felt unrecognizable to himself. This is where the audience breaks, because now the question isn't why did he do it, it's how long could anyone fight a battle they didn't understand? Act 3 ends with this truth. For Hughes, he thought his madness was keeping him alive. For Heath, madness blurred the boundaries. But for Robin, madness wasn't the enemy. The betrayal of awareness was. And that's the tragedy, that's the uniqueness. That's the place no one else in this series goes. Act 4 is where we confront the climax, where the silence overtakes the spark and the story becomes both unbearably tragic and impossibly beautiful. The silence when the engine finally stopped. You can chart a lot of lives by their accomplishments. You chart Robin Williams' life by his motion. It's what made him brilliant. It's what made him empathetic. It's what made him impossible to replace. But motion has a weakness. It depends on the engine. And in his final months, the engine failed him. Not the heart, not the will, the humor, the desire to help others, but the machinery, the circuitry, the literal biology. The thing that powered all the magic, his brain, betrayed him. When even the genius couldn't keep up. Imagine being Robin Williams in those last months. A man whose entire identity is built around quickness, but your thoughts now move like they're wading through mud. A man whose entire life is connection, but suddenly you can't follow the thread of a conversation. Whose whole soul is improvisation, but you can't find the next word in a sentence. Who spent decades reading other people's emotions, but now can't even read your own. He wasn't losing motivation, or passion, or courage. He was losing himself. And he knew it. That's the cruelty of Lewy body dementia. It leaves enough awareness to feel the collapse. He wasn't gone. He was present enough to know he was slipping. That is a hell no one can live in for long. The final silence. Robin Williams died by an aggressive undiagnosed case of Lewy body dementia. If you need details of his death beyond that, you're in the wrong place. August 11, 2014, the world invented a lie. That he died because he was depressed, that he gave up, that he chose quiet over chaos. But that isn't the truth. That isn't his story. That isn't the man Robin Williams ever was. He didn't seek silence. Silence sought him. And in the end, when his awareness dimmed, when his thoughts fractured, when the hallucinations and confusion grew too loud, the noise inside his brain became unbearable. It wasn't peace that took Robin Williams, it was fear, confusion, a battle with an enemy invincible to everyone else, including him. Lewy body dementia wasn't depression, it was a neurological ambush, a biological coup that stole his vision, reasoning, sense of self, identity, and spark. And when that spark flickered out, the silence finally caught him. The thesis, the annals of obsession defined. This, everything we've covered, proves exactly what this story has been circling from Hughes to Heath to Robin. The annals of obsession isn't about tragedy for tragedy's sake. It's about mapping the energy of an atom where genius and madness coexist. Coded in brilliance, fused by obsession, separated only by awareness. Howard Hughes had awareness until the walls closed in. Heath Ledger had awareness until he dove too deep into creation. And Robin Williams? He always had awareness, hyper-awareness, the painful kind, the empathetic kind, the kind that never let him rest. Awareness is the barrier, the membrane, the final shield that keeps brilliance from crossing into collapse. And Robin never lost his, not spiritually, not emotionally. No, it was being stolen from him. Neuron by neuron, hallucination by hallucination, confusion by confusion. A biological betrayal dismantling the very thing that kept his spark safe. And when the awareness was finally flickering out, when he could no longer trust his thoughts or the room, the silence or himself, he didn't fall into madness. He crossed into it unwillingly, unarmed, unprepared, and only because the disease forced him through the door. And Robin Williams, too bright, kind, human, full of light, could not survive in a world without awareness. He was never built for madness. He was built for motion, compassion, brilliance of genius and connection, empathy. So when the awareness that protected him disappeared, when the spark dimmed and the world blurred, when that engine misfired, he couldn't let the madness exist, not inside him, not with his name on it, not as his final chapter. That is not weakness or failure. Robin's awareness wasn't lost, it was taken. And with it, the world lost one of its brightest sparks. And yet, here's the thing every fan, every comedian, every soldier he hugged, every stranger he helped knows. Sometimes the brightest stars burn out fastest, but the light they leave behind lasts longer than they ever believed. Because Robin didn't leave silence behind, he left echo. Echo in the soldiers he made laugh, audiences he healed, friends he comforted, children he entertained, people he loved, and the millions he reached. His spark started something none of us can put out. Robin once said, "You'll have bad times, but they will always wake you up to the stuff you weren't paying attention to." He knew pain wasn't optional, but awareness was where the meaning lived. Let's draw inspiration, not chaos. Let's smile for the memories, for the laughs, for the characters and energy. Not be selfish that they're over, but cherish that they exist and burn brilliantly forever. Let's continue and strive for brilliance of our own, for the laughs, the friendships, the beauty, the empathy, and for the peace we all chase in our quiet moments. From the first time he told America he was from outer space, to one of the most beautiful lines ever spoken on film, Robin Williams spent his life lighting dark places. I'm Rab Greason, and in the annals, Robin isn't a chapter, he's the North Star. Tonight, we see him clearly. He's not alone, and the mission he carried his whole life to make us feel seen is finally complete, as he looks down and sees all of us. And so we close with the echo that feels like the sunrise he left behind, from what dreams may come. Smile, my boy. It's sunrise. Good night.